up, Ionics, and welcome back to our latest tutorial about using Supabase with Ionic. We previously had a tutorial about the basics, about authentication, working with a database of Supabase, and today we will get into another new feature that was added recently, and that is storage. So that means we will build an application starting again with the authentication and setting up all the SQL stuff inside Supabase, and then handle upload of images using the Capacitor camera plugin. We will upload these images to different buckets. We will have a private and a public bucket, so users can have their own private files and they can also contribute to a public bucket. They can delete the files. So we implement all the basic functionalities with a lot of logic in this tutorial, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Not wearing my Supabase swag yet. I hope it will arrive until the next video about Supabase, which we will definitely create. And once again, a quick warning, Supabase is, at the time recording this video, still in beta, so things might change. Capacitor 3 might change a few lines of this video, so take care of that. If you want to follow along, I highly recommend you scroll down a bit to the description and check out the link to my DevDectic blog where the tutorial is hosted, because we got a lot of code, and for some sections I will bring in the code so we can move a bit quicker, because the video is gonna be pretty long today anyway. So let's waste no time and directly get into our Ionic Supabase file management and upload application. Alright, so let's get started with today's application. We can bring up a blank new Ionic application, and we need to do a few things. We need to generate two new files, so one for the login and one to edit the files that we want to upload. We need an additional service and a guard to protect our application. That's everything from the Ionic side. Then we of course need the Supabase JS client package, so we can easily work with Supabase. And if you also want to upload files from your browser, you can also install the Progressive Web App Elements package. We will not really use it in this video because it always breaks my camera recording, and I will just do it directly on a device. And then I recommend you run the first Ionic build and add the platform that you want to test on. Now, before we dive more into our application, let's head over to Supabase. Create a new account. It's free currently in beta, and I think it will be free in the future as well. I've created already a new project in my organization. So I actually ran the initial setup, but I will show you what I did. So basically, all you have to do is run a huge SQL command to set up everything. There are a few predefined, we've seen them in the past already, and this is the one we need today. Can we make this? Yeah. So what we need is, first of all, a table files, ID primary key, user ID within the table. Every file will have a title, a flag to indicate if it's private or public, and a URL. Actually, that should be file name, not file URL. Not sure where that is from. Definitely need to check that out. Okay, and of course timestamp. We will use row level security. That's the way to secure your database within Supabase. We create a few policies, so only authenticated users can edit their files. And then we got another block to set up storage. So all of this is of course in the article linked below the video. You don't have to type all of this. You can just copy it from there. For the storage, we create two buckets, one that we call public, ID also public, and another one that's called private. And for the public ID, basically, every file is public. For the private bucket, we said that the authenticated user is the owner of the file for a select. Yeah, we will actually not really select file. Maybe that's for if you're using a list on a bucket, that could work as well. But more important, for an insert on the bucket, we need to make sure that the user is authenticated. And for deleting, the user should be the owner. And then we got another block here about enabling real-time functionality. By default, that's disabled. So you run these sequence of commands to drop the publication if exists Supabase Realtime. Then you create it again. I don't know why this is actually necessary. Perhaps will change in the future. And then you add the specific table for which you want to have the real-time, well, not notifications, but messages. That's our files table. And finally, change the table identity full here. This will allow us to get the full record even if we remove an element. So that's just a little addition. Once again, all of this linked below the video. And once you've got this, you can see in storage, you should have two buckets, public and private. We will fill them with some love. We got some policies in place. We got our, where's the database? We got the files database with 6 columns that we created, and we should have some policy somewhere. I still need to, maybe here. Somewhere the policies for the table will be as well, but we have our files table. And now we can integrate it into our project. We will make the first part a bit faster. About the authentication, because we already had this in the past. Check out the video. I don't know what the tutorial was called, something with Supabase and Ionic. That was really the base tutorial. So we head over to our environment first of all, and within the environment we're gonna add 2 entries. We're gonna add the Supabase URL and the Supabase key, and we can grab this from settings API. Hit copy and hit paste. And hit copy here on the anonymous key and hit paste. There we go. All right, if you may want to make a production build, of course, add it to your production environment as well. Let's quickly also check out our app routing. If you feel like I drank too much coffee today, that's not right. I just read a comment on one of my videos that I drank too much coffee, but actually I'm just super excited about Supabase and I really enjoyed working with this today. So I just had 1 coffee today. Within the app routing, we don't need the file model entry, and because I like to see it as a logical order in my route, I will put login first, home second, and we of course want to redirect to a login in case something goes wrong. Now we're gonna head over to the Supabase service and implement the authentication first. As I said, we will make that part a bit shorter, simply because we already had it in the past. Now, we're gonna keep this inside a behavior subject, just like we did most of the time. This time I only added the types Boolean or user. Actually, we can import user from Supabase.js to get the right type, and the Supabase client as well. Now, let me bring in some additional stuff just to throw you off. We got a const for our file database, so we don't have to type the name of the database all the time. Definitely recommended. And then we got 2 interfaces. I just want to put them here already because I tend to forget these things and then I'm lost, and yeah, you know. Okay, for the constructor, we're gonna add the private router. That's actually all we need for now. And within the constructor, we can now initialize our Supabase by calling the create client function. That should automatically be imported as well from Supabase.js, right? And we need to pass in our environment. Let's try to use the right import. Are you using it? Yeah, that's good. We need the Supabase URL, and most likely we need the environment. Please don't add another import, thanks. The Supabase key. Additionally, I had some settings in the past that worked kind of good for me, and those were auto refresh token. I actually got code completion. Nice. I really like Supabase. And if I ever say Firebase during this video, I'm sorry. I've just used Firebase for so long, and Supabase is so similar in terms of spelling that it just can happen, right? Okay, this is creating the initial connection to Supabase using our URL and the key. Those are just settings, so we get our session back when the user is authenticated for longer times, persist sessions. But still in the beginning, we need to do two things. And I will bring this in because I said we want to make this a bit shorter. We want to listen to any auth state change. And whenever we get the sign in event, we can set our current user to the current user and initially load our files and set up our real-time listener. In fact, those two will be implemented later. I just want to have it in there. But usually that wasn't enough for me with login. So I always had to add another function which was loading the user as well using this .supabase auth user. This isn't actually returning a promise. I don't know why I have a wait in here, but I feel like it was working better with that line, and it just made me feel better. So we will also call that function, which maybe triggers something, and we got this snippet basically in two places if we got a user. So I really had problems with this in the beginning, and I said it the last time already. Now, to get our current user, we will add a helper function because our current user is set to private. You should do this if you have a behavior subject. Otherwise, people from other files could change your current user, and you really only want to allow them read access. And if you return it as an observable, you just give it away as an observable that people can't change. Now, for the sign up and sign in, of course, there's an easy function within the Supabase package, which is here. And I've wrapped it inside a custom promise as it didn't return the data as I wish it was. So, yeah, that's basically it. We got the same for the sign up here and the sign in here. For sign up, there's actually something cool that we can use next to the Supabase sign out. And that is to do this, not yet, but to get all the active subscriptions. If you remember Firebase and logging out a user, you sometimes got these errors because you didn't manage your subscriptions correctly. So maybe that's the reason why they invented this. You can get all active subscriptions and then remove the subscription, and then we route back to the beginning. Okay, it's time to move into our login. We will make a reactive form here, or we're going to use a reactive form. So we have to add it to our login module, and then we can head over to the login page. And that's the page we're going to really keep very, very short. Okay, because it's really, we've done this quite a few times already. If you haven't done, check out any of my other videos where I have a full login. We set up our reactive form with email and password, and both login and sign up. Did you get those imports automatically? How did we get them? Anyway, for the login and for the sign up, we're just using our service and then wrap them with a nice loading. And if the sign in is successful, we navigate to our inside page. Same for sign up, but by default, if you check out your project, the authentication settings, by default, you get an email confirmation. You can disable this here inside your project. I didn't disable it, so after a sign up, I show the alert, sign up success, please confirm your email now, because otherwise you can't log in. And that's it for the whole logic at that point. Now we're gonna head over to our login page HTML. So, hey, we don't want that. So we can connect our form, the credentials form. On submit, we wanna call login. Make sure that you give your button the type submit if you want to trigger the submit function, and give it the type button if you don't want to trigger the submit action. So a little gem in here, because that's the button that's calling the sign up. Then we got our two fields, form control password and form control name email, and that's basically it. So at this point, we're still able to access our home page. And I think let's just quickly also interact with our guard that we added in the first place. We can directly attach it in here. I think we used can activate, right? For the authentication guard. It won't change anything because it's just returning true at the moment. So let's remove this, and we got a little bit for this already within our service. So we're gonna inject our Supabase service in here as well, and the router. Add all missing imports. I really need a shortcut for add all missing imports. It's like the most used function for me in Visual Studio. I will just bring it in because once again, that's the function we used in most of the places where we had some sort of authentication. We grab our current user, which is a behavior subject itself, but of course we can only access it as an observable. Oh no, I pressed the wrong button. Really, that was like the first time that ever happened that I just closed this window. Come on. Okay, we got our canActivate function, which filters out the initial null value. Afterwards, our behavior subject should always have either true or false or a user object. So that's the whole point of filtering out this. I wanted to do it better with instance of and type of, but actually user is just an interface and it wasn't too easy to then use type of. So I'm pretty sure this could be improved so you don't have to use that logic and checking the objects, but for now this will do. Let's hit save. Once our live reload is ready, we should also be able to see the login, and I previously created already 2 users, so I will use my one user, simondevdactic.com, with a super secure password, and then we're inside. Great. That's already good news. We also see the auth changed. If I now hit refresh on that page, we actually don't see the auth state changed. That was what I wanted to show you in the beginning. That's the reason why we have this load user function in here, because if you have no user in the beginning, this will just not return anything. I think it should return something, but that's a decision for the Supabase company to make. I think we're actually ready to move into uploading files at this point because we are authenticated users. Maybe I'll do another one here. Let me open this on the side as an anonymous user. So we will then later check this one as well and have 2 different users signed in. But for now, let's once again focus on our authentication service. Why are you red? I don't care. And let's head to the bottom. We will actually not load the files yet, but we're gonna implement something to upload a file. And that's gonna be a camera file. We can use the interface from Capacitor, so that's a camera photo. And we're gonna pass in some custom information that will use our very own interface here for the file info. What we're gonna do now is pretty easy. We're gonna head over to the home page, and on the home page we're gonna add a fab button. A fab button to simply, let's close this, to simply add files. And while we're here, we can also add our little logout logic. So let's change to the TypeScript implementation and inject our Supabase service. I should have used a shorter name, maybe next time. And as well the modal controller, there we go. Now we can create a function to add our files, and we can also implement the logout, which is just calling the function from our Supabase package. Okay, what we need is a few plugins from Capacitor. I'm still using Capacitor 2 at this point. If you're using Capacitor 3 when you watch this video, you might have to install a different package to use camera and don't import it from plugins, but from something like add Capacitor camera. That could be the case if you're using Capacitor 3. But since I'm using Capacitor 2, we can still use it like this. And we can now grab an image. That should hopefully be the same with Capacitor 3. Quality allow editing, result type set to URI. I don't want to use base 64 this time. We will actually still interact with it at some point, but URI is usually the most efficient, so we're going to use that. And I've set the source to camera for today. Now, once we've captured an image at this point, we're gonna add a little log in here, image, and I'm not gonna do this now on I will do it in here. Let's do this, Simon at devdactic.com. I really recommend you also try the logic on a real device. It's usually a better indicator for how things work. Yeah, I really like the iOS keyboard, devdactic. No, the fault is always on your side. It's not the device. Okay, I'm signed in. I can click add to add a file, and if we want to inspect it, let's also use all the available tools for debugging from our mighty Safari browser and open our inspector, and then we should see, and this is hopefully not messing up with my setup here, use photo. There we go. Thanks, photo, you're great. Camera, you're dismissed. We don't want that anymore. Just another 2 window. Okay, so we got a path and we got a web path. And if we capture this within the browser directly, if we install the Progressive Web App Elements package, you'll only get a web path. But we can work with that. And what we're gonna do for now is we're gonna pass that result to our modal. And within our modal, we will then start the actual upload. So we're going to inject our file modal page, and we're going to pass the image right through the component properties to that page. So where's our file modal? There we go. Because we're passing it to that page, we can now easily define an input here from which we will then be able to use the image directly. Just make sure you're using the same name, and then you can use it just like this. We will also create an object which we'll use as the ng model for our super simple form, private, and we're gonna save also a title. Did we take a look at the exact columns in the beginning? No, I haven't shown you that, right? So our files table has the columns created at. We got file name. We will set this when we upload it. ID automatically generated, private boolean, true or false. Yeah, that's a boolean. A title, something, and the user ID. So that's everything we have to fill out when we upload our file. Let's just say that is a cool image. Okie dokie. The problem is now that we can't just display the image, the web path, as we will run into a few Angular problems. So instead of doing this, we're gonna add another variable that I just called image path, and then we inject a few things, the loading, and especially the DOM sanitizer. And that will be used to now use the value from our image, the web path. As I said, this will be both within the Progressive Web App Elements image capturing as well as on a device. And then we can easily display that image inside our view just using the image path, like just like this basically. Okay. For the header area, let's also make sure that we can go back with a little close button. I don't know why I always implement this. It's so, you know how to close a modal, right? I don't know if I have to show you, but in some videos I assume this could really be your first video watching this, and then you're like, how can I close my modal? But like 90% of the other people are, come on Simon, we already know how to close a modal. I don't know, I'm torn between that. But anyway, we got the close now, and we talked way too long about it. Let's do our save functionality, and maybe let's just quickly bring up the other view elements. So what we need in here is one item for the title, one item with a checkbox for switching between private or public file, and finally our save button. And then we can actually already take a look at this on a device. Let's quickly capture an image, so imageception. There we go, use photo, opens the modal and doesn't display the modal. That's always great. So at some point we went wrong because can't bind to ngIf since it's not a known property. Okay, that usually means our page isn't imported correctly. We're calling it on the home page, so let's also add our file model page module in here. And if this works first try, you think like, wow, Simon, you're a magician. Okay, let's do this again. Use photo. There we go. Okay, Simon the Sorcerer is back. We're gonna keep that title. We can checkmark this or uncheck it, doesn't really matter. And on save and upload, we now need to do two things. Actually, we just need to do one thing for now, and that is calling the function of our Supabase service. So we're gonna display loading while we do this, then we do this, and then we dismiss the loading and the modal. You can also add a little toast at this point, but I was just too lazy for that today. So we pass in the image, which we captured with Capacitor, and the information, which is just this for now. Maybe we could also use our interface. That would be cool, right? And then we can head over to our upload function, which will now perform all the magic. Okay, let's do this. There's a little problem, and the problem is that we will call, let's start at the end and then move forward, that we need to send a file to Supabase. So we can do it like this.supabase storage from, and we pass in the bucket name, so that is either public or private. So maybe we will create a variable that we call bucket name at some point. Actually, we can already do this. We know that from the info, it's either private or public. If it's private, the name is private, and otherwise it's public. Okay, so we want to apply to that bucket, and we could maybe start a new row. That would be cool as well. And we can now call upload, and we need to pass in a path to our file. A path to where we want to upload the file. Come on. We will set this file name to something, and then the actual file. But the camera file here, although I just called it camera file, isn't really a file, and we need to convert it to a file. Now, normally this could be a super easy task. It could just work like this with a fetch API. I'm gonna set file to null because this won't work. So we could call fetch on the web path and then convert it to a blob and then create a new file from that blob. That works actually pretty great, only not on mobile. So this implementation only works for our web browser, and therefore we're gonna have to add a little custom logic. If is platform, let's just use hybrid. In that case, we need a different logic, and otherwise we can keep the logic. So in the hybrid case, what we need to do is we can first of all grab from the file system, so the Capacitor file system, the file. We can use the path now, because if we inspect the camera photo, there's somewhere a path if we use the camera file type URI, and the web path won't work that great. If we do this, can we do this automatically? That would be amazing, but I feel like it's wrong now because we will actually, what was the syntax? Import, const file, something like this. Come on. Yeah, like this. Destructuring the file system from plugins. Back to it. Okay, we're on the mobile device, and we can now read that file using the actual path. We've seen the path on our thingy here, so that's exactly this. If we call read that file, we will get back a data URL. And that data URL is, of course, not yet enough because we need another helper for that. Let me add this private data URL to file. And now we can actually use fetch to fetch the base64 data, convert it to a blob, convert it to a file, super easy. and then use that little helper function in here to say, okay, on the mobile case, file is equal to await this dot data URL to file, and now passing in the data. Make sure at this point we're actually already destructuring the result. If you would use it like this, then you would have to pass in result.data. Just want to show you this because maybe you think, oh, data is a bad name, I want to use something else, then feel free to give it a try and debug this for an hour. Okay, that means for both cases we now got a file that we can pass to our upload function. We just need to set the file name. We want to make this kinda unique. We're going to use the current user ID from Supabase and the current time, which we can get like this. Okay, that's most of the things that we need to do. We can also put this into another line and this as well, then it looks pretty cool. And now we need to do another thing, because right now we're only uploading the file to storage, but we still want to keep track of this within the database. In the past we also did the same with Firebase. And to do so, we're gonna add a bit more information to our object now. So to our file info object, and we're gonna set the file name to the file name we just used in here. That will make it quite easy to later retrieve that file from storage. We could maybe also use a list function on storage, could work as well, but that would be quite boring. We want to interact with the database as well. That's all the fun. To also save that file to our database, we add another function that we call save file info, and now we can call return this dot save file info with our info object. And that's once again using the standard syntax from our database name, insert, whatever. So that's standard SQL basically. Our user ID, the title, private, true or false, and the file name. And once all of this has run through, we should see a new file in the database. So let's give all of this a try now. We got this. Use photo. That's a cool image. We will keep it like this. Save and upload. And we don't know if it worked or not, but we can check this. Let's see. We go to storage. We go to public, and we see the image has appeared here instantly. And we can also go to the table editor, to files, and we see private, false, file name, whatever. Is there any more information created? And that means we got both informations uploaded to Supabase. Yes, we don't have a lot of error handling in here. That's up to you. I'm sure you can add this, but so far, I think that's already a great result, at least after 30 minutes. No, it was really, the setup took a lot of time. Uploading the file was then pretty easy, especially if you know how to convert the file correctly. And now we just need to display the file. That's going to be interesting as well, because we need to create the logic to load the files in the beginning and to set up our database handler, the real-time handler as well. So let's start with two easy functions. To get our public files. Oh, we haven't created them, I guess. Yeah, I left that out in the beginning so I don't confuse you even more. So we could just gonna add two behavior subjects at the top, which basically look like the current user, but those will have file items. File items have actually the interface of our database, created file name ID, private title user ID. I extended them with two additional values, creator and image URL. We will set them on the fly when we get the data, which will make our life in the front end actually a bit easier, or maybe even a lot easier. So I just added the types in here as well, but those are not too important. Now, to load our files, I think we should do this a bit faster. What we're gonna do to load the files in the beginning is simply making one query to Supabase, our file database, selecting all data and ordering it. That's the whole query. Now, after querying the data, we will get back a lot of records, and we will get back those which have the private field set either to false, or in which case, or if the field is set to true, we will only get the ones we created. Because if we once again go back to our initial SQL, we will see at some point that users can see public and their own files. So for every select, either the private field needs to be false, or the user ID needs to be equal to the current user ID requesting it. Therefore, we don't really need to add any more filtering at that point. But what we need to do is we want to map all data, so basically iterate through all of the data records that we get at this point. Let's add a little look here, query result. And for everything set the if the user was the creator of that, so we can add a delete button in the end, and as well get the image file. Because maybe we can leave this out for now and just set const data to this, because what follows is just dividing them by private or not private into our two behavior subjects and then calling next on the behavior subjects. That's pretty easy. But at the same time, do we want to do more? No, let's just first of all see this in action. This should actually be possible right here. So we see the query result, we get back some data. Remember, I guess I'm logged in as the same user as I'm on my device. Not too bad for the moment. That's the information we get back. And this file name doesn't really help too much. So we're going to create a helper function that will give us a real image. And we're going to call this get image for file item. Because we got our nice interfaces in place, that's pretty easy. Once again, we need the bucket name, and before I type this super simple line, I'm going to copy it. And there we go. Same. And then we can return this dot supabase dot storage dot download. No. From, first of all, we first of all need to select our source. The bucket ID, in this case our bucket name, either private or public, and then we can call either download, we can create a signed URL, but for today we want to call download. But here you actually see all the other cool things that we could do. Of course, we want to download the item.file name, that's what we stored in the database, and then we get back something. So I actually don't know what we get back at this point. But now we can't really, can we comment this in? We can give it a try. Let's see, this won't work, that won't work. Let's just return something, I don't care. But I wanna see the rest log in there. What we can actually, okay. So we get back from Supabase storage a blob. A blob isn't too helpful at that place if we want to display it as an image inside our application. But what we can do at that point instead is call URL create object URL on our data. And then because Angular, we also need to call the sanitizer, which we also used already in our modal before. So we can just inject private sanitizer, DOM sanitizer at this point as well. And then we can directly convert the image URL correctly and return that. Now, all of this is an async operation. That is a tiny little problem because we can't do this. We can't just do a nice map in here. This will return, as we see, a promise save URL. That means, and once we display the image URL, we need to take care of that. And actually, I think we can directly do this, right? We're loading the images. Let's show something on our screen. We can take care of the rest in a second. So let's head over to our homepage, and on the homepage we're gonna grab the private files and the public files, and we're gonna also add a little segment that we can switch with our active list up here. Then we can dive into the real homepage, and on the homepage we can add our cool select, which will just select between the public and the private view, and then create two lists depending on which view is active. And it just looks like this. If we're on the public list, we're gonna iterate all the public files, and the public files are still inside the observable, so we're gonna use the async pipe. We got the title, we got the created at, no problem. The only problem is the image URL. That's the custom property we've set, which in the background basically downloads the file from Firebase storage. So at this point, we also once again need to use the pipe in here. And then if we want to, we can also add a little delete fab if we are the creator, once again using the custom property that we added. So those two things make it a bit easier for us to directly show the image and to have that fab, and so we only download the image once. Let's see if we can already see something. Yes, we can, and we can actually also at the same time see it in here. We could also remove it, that won't work yet. We can switch between those lists, and that's already a good start. Let's finish that view for now. We can just copy this block because we will just use it a second time. If the active list is private, we're gonna use the private files, blah, blah, blah. We can actually keep the rest just like it is. Okay, maybe I will show you quickly how to add another private file. Let's do this one, use photo, private file, save and upload. And then we can also, we haven't added the real-time database changes. Now you see why we need them. So let's head over to some place in our application that we haven't seen. No, we have seen all the places. To the Supabase servers, because we want to handle all the incoming changes. And we used this in the past. Let me bring in the base for this. And the basic idea is to listen to all the changes. You could also only listen to insert or only delete events here, and then do something once you retrieve those events. We will add a little log so we can later see exactly what's going on, but there are basically only two cases that I want to catch today. The first one is if the payload event type is equal to insert, or else if it is equal to delete. In the first case, we have to add a new item to our observables, behavior subjects. In the second case, we need to filter it out. Now, since we're already quite far in this video, let's do this quickly. We can get the new item by using our payload.new. Do we actually get typing? Yeah, maybe we would. And then we also need to set on the fly the creator and image once again, because from the database we don't get that information, so we need to manually take care of this at this point. But be aware that we get all the events. That means we maybe get the events from another authenticated user who adds a private file. And therefore, we need to add a little check up front. So if the item is private and the new item user ID is equal to our ID and only our ID, in that case, we can download the image like we did before to set the image URL, and then have a little logic to update the private files by adding the new item and all the existing values from private files. In the else case that the item is not private, we can also do the same actually. Yeah, but in that case, we of course update the public files instead. So that means we leave out the case that somebody else uploaded a private image. We still get that information here. That's not super secure, but we're actually as a user not able to access that file from storage based on our rules. I think so, maybe not. But at that point, we could maybe improve this a bit more with the rules that we've set within our SQL statement. I'm pretty sure there could be another policy that restricts this, or the real-time updates could be restricted to only showing information relevant to us. Now for the delete case, we're gonna pretty much do the same, but only in this case we grab the old item from the payload, and then we have the same logic again. If it is a private item and our item, we update the private files by filtering out the old item. If it's not a private item, we filter out the public files. And I feel like we forgot one function. I think we forgot the remove function. So let's add that one as well and then play a bit around with our application. Now to remove a file entry, we need to handle two things. We need to delete the file from our database, so we can call a match statement using the item ID to simply delete the record from the database. But at the same time, we also need to remove the file from bucket. We could also use promise.all to do them at the same time. I just wanted to have the functionality in general in here, not a big deal at all. And to finally wrap this up, we could now go to the, where could we go? To the home page, right? And from here, call our Supabase service remove file entry function. And now let's also play a bit more with our application. We also got that one. I will also log in with the second one. So definitely make sure you pick a right email for your two accounts because you have to confirm them or disable the confirmation. Okay, I'm logged in with a different user now. I can only see public images and my private images are empty. I also see that I can't delete that image. Only the first user can do this. Can we do this really small? We don't need the debugging tools anymore. So let's see them side by side. So that's a private, cool private image. For the second user, now let's take another photo, something we haven't captured. I don't know, this one. Oh, that looks good. We're gonna make this cool image public as well, save and upload. And did we actually call our listener to updates? I really don't know. As always, I just forgot one little word, and that is to subscribe here. Because our handle database change function needs to subscribe to those changes to the observable, we're not calling subscribe anywhere else. So now we got that in place. Let's once again take a look at our implementation now. We're gonna add a new image of my cool chips here. We're gonna use that photo. We're gonna keep it public, save and upload, and it immediately appears here and there. We see our real-time changes. We see the new event added here, creator, whatever, file name. Image URL is the promise that we set, and creator is what we said. We can see that we can't delete that image. We could delete that image instead, or on my other device, I could now delete this cool image here, and it would immediately disappear here. At the same time, this user can have private images, and this user could have a private image as well. Let's do this. Let's make this one private. And then we see that we still get the real-time change in here with a new entry to our database. We're not adding it, so it doesn't appear anywhere here or here. It is only inside the private section of this user right here. But still, this could be approved in the future if you're working with the real-time capabilities. Yeah. Besides that, I think everything works. We can capture images, we can store them, we can log out, and we shouldn't be able to access the homepage anymore. That works great as well. So I think, did we actually cover everything? Such a quick video. My videos get even shorter. Now I'm below an hour. No. Anyway, I think that's everything. We got everything. I don't want to mess this up. We got the delete function, we got the upload function, we got the different sections of private and public files, and as a little addition, maybe try and work with the other storage functionalities now. There are more. You can also list items from the bucket, you can move items, so users maybe could have also folders. That would be something interesting. Or you can even move them between public and private if you want to make them public, perhaps. All of that would be cool examples or cool exercises. So if you want to get more into this, definitely give those a try. A little exercise for you today. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you stick with me until the end of this video, and I hope you also enjoyed the new storage functionality of Supabase. At this point, I really enjoy working with Supabase. I like to set up those SQL statements and policies in the beginning. I like to handle my database changes directly, so to mimic those real-time changes. The storage functionalities are good. Basically everything that we do really makes sense and it feels quite good. Supabase is definitely the choice I will try for my next side project. I haven't planned anything yet, so I'm not using it, but I will definitely give it a try if I got anything else. Of course, Firebase also makes sense if you have a use case for no SQL database, but I feel like a lot of people come from SQL anyway. In that case, Supabase might be something for you. Once again, if you're looking for the code, look below the video, and please leave a like, hit the subscribe button so you get notified about all the upcoming videos, and of course check out the Ionic Academy, my code school to help you with everything Ionic. I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you enjoy Supabase, give it a try, and I will catch you next time like always, so happy coding, Simon.